say I've never even heard a nonsensical, non-proven idea about how the universe exists. Here's an idea. Like, okay, well, red came in. Yes, red the color. And red made the universe a little bedtime nap, okay? And in this little bedtime nap, then the universe woke up. And then after the universe had woken up, it then decided to turn blue. And then after the universe had turned blue, it decided to turn back red again. And you know what happens when it turns red. And the only reason that red turned up in the whole beginning of it all is simply because something. I still don't know, right? we're still at the how does something become created argument. We just started it all over again. You see what I'm saying? Like, I can't even come up with a hypothetical, even the most stupid hypothetical, as a placeholder. I have no conceptual idea. You see what I'm saying? And that's beyond anything. That's the craziest question that I've ever seen unanswered. And it's also one that nobody ever talks about. Man, how does it do it? How does red come into the picture, even hypothetically? Oh, well, it has no logic or structure. That's right. Okay. So, I mean, red was just one of the things you happened to see. I like that. In a world with no logic or structure, red decided to wake up. And when red woke up, there was a great big nap. And after the great big nap, everything turned blue. And then after everything turned blue, it turned red again. And when red turns up, you know what happens. And it's an infinite series if you just look at it from red's perspective. But red is just one thing. Red is just a mere shape in a greater, bigger dimensional universe than this. And the mere existence of red creates our entire universe. It is merely one thing out of a large bookshelf of things, or a large collection of things. And why are all these things there? How did they get there? Do they need to have gotten there? Were they always there? Is there no time there? Is time a mere conceptual imagination, being in a universe that is merely one of the objects in this greater reality? So with time being merely a concept, now there is no how did it get there? How did it end up? How did it stop being there? It's merely that it is there. But it's not in a time. It's timeless. It's a timeless classic. It's red. Timeless classic. Man. I just still didn't even come up with a conceptual idea. Now we just have a timeless universe that exists that creates universes with time. Okay. So what? How did it come out of nowhere? So let's imagine a universe with no space. Okay. So not only does the time scaling come out of nowhere, because it's just the dimensional feel of an object, like a real object in a real space. Now we're getting rid of the space. So, I mean, what if space were created just the same? It's just the feel of an object in a universe with no space. So all of these different spaces are created because they go along a time scale that is within an object that truly exists in a true universe. And so all of the space that happened in between was also created, a mere hypothetical. a mere defined, realistic, with rules, hypothetical, as it is a fully defined, fully formed, real object in a real space. But it's a spaceless space, so it can never be interrupted. So it does have a true universal physics and story to be told that unravels in a direct and specific way that leads right back to the beginning. And that's what every object is in every iteration of thing that we see on this plethora here. And then they all exist just because it is an amalgamation that can be made, given the criteria of all the different objects that could ever be made. There is a real physical physics that creates these objects, that then creates their never-ending, perpetual, cyclic story, and their cyclic matter configuration that is created. And it is the physics of that universe that creates the limitation. And then it wraps right back into being like, that's just a greater description of my overall thing that I said before. And it's not really, I guess, I don't know. It's not really. I mean, it gets around time, it gets around space, it gets around the creation argument. But there's still, why is there that? It could be that it's, again, part of a bigger series of things, where there is not only just this space that I've mentioned, that has all these objects that create, shapes and time, and the story between that time that inevitably leads back into itself, and has an overall ruled structure for what shapes that can be created. But there is also every other rule set and configuration for every other shape that could be created, or any other conceptual thing that could be created. You could just go to the antithesis of it. So just like, let's get rid of the word created at that point. It's just everything that is. So why opposed to being is not, and why opposed to being isn't is it is. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure. And that's the real question. Other than, no single bachelors. Some things that contradict one another. If everything is created, then that includes a whole bunch of nothing. So what? Yeah, you could have been looking at the nothing, or you could be looking at the something, and you happen to be looking at something. Congratulations. So I don't think that's a good argument to say, I think logically it's flawed. And, I think naturally and in the universe it is flawed. To believe that, why is there nothing instead of something? There just is both. On the grand scale of the universe, even, far beyond here, and far beyond the picture we see here, I would bet that there is, there's all these spaces of nothing, right? How do you even create nothing? Maybe that's the real argument. I've never seen nothing. Not a single time. All right, now I see mass. I see the energy reflected off of it. You can see it right there. And, I see time. And I see a vacuum space all around me in different concentrations. And I see, the material in different concentrations. I don't see any nothing anywhere. Maybe you just can't have nothing. Because, you inherently are something. So in a universe where nothing exists, maybe it's so all-inclusive that when you create nothing, it is truly nothing. And there is no existence there. So it's actually a logical fallacy that can't exist. In my world of everything that exists, can exist, and will, and does, you can't create nothing because it's a logical fallacy. There just isn't one. That could be the case. Let me think about that. Any flaws to poke in there? I don't know. So the great question is, it's not why is there something instead of nothing. That could be fine. They could just be both. It could, where's the third answer on this? When you ask a 2-answer question, you come up with a third answer that is the real answer, and then solves it from being an unanswerable question. How do you do that with this? And here's the question. Why did you think there was nothing in the beginning? And why do you think there's something now? It's a simulation. That's the best answer. That's all I got, And it's probably, all that ever could be at some point. If this place makes any sense or has any tracking on the real world. If I've assessed nothing about this place that tells me anything about the real world, then I would just have no idea. But is that even hypothetically possible? It would have to be an entire misinterpretation of everything. But also, not only an entire misinterpretation of everything, it would have to be entire misinterpretation of everything that you have. Okay, so I mean, even if you did misinterpret everything, it still could be applied. It just hasn't yet. You haven't figured anything out. It's very different from you don't have the puzzle pieces to put together to make the puzzle. You could still hypothetically figure out everything from inside of a simulation. Although you could be entirely on the wrong track. And much easier than if you were in the real world. Yeah, that sounds about right. I just sit here all day and I just say, yeah, that sounds about right. After a long time of thinking about all this different stuff, It seems kind of silly. Yeah. It is kind of silly. But Simulation. I don't know. I still don't get it. I mean, just entertain any idea real quick. God. Where'd God come from? God could just be like a means of all the other tools, right? Like if everything that ever could exist does exist, then like if this exists in like God's imagination, for example, then that's just the same thing, right? But like where does God exist and how does he exist? That's just still the unanswered question again, but now rephrased as God. Okay. Simulation. Still kind of just the same question, right? I mean, maybe there's a grander physical theme. And so it seems more like base to think about it as a simulation, right? Even if God is running the simulation, think about it as a simulation. I think that's fair. Okay, physical universe. This is just merely a physical universe. Physics is the answer. Then how am I so far off? Where's the beginning? Where's the end? Where did you come from? Where did you go? Cotton Eye Joe. Come on now. I'm so far off on that. I don't even know. Let's get rid of the logical idea of if there was nothing and now there's something. No, there's just something and nothing all the time. Where'd the universe come from? Oh, well, it came from this, bigger overall soup of matter and blah, blah, blah. I could really get into that. I can show you that. That's fine. Where'd that soup of matter come from? So on, so on, so on. There's different rules, You exit the actual universe that has these physical rules. There's some other place that has different physical rules than here. You could think of it hypothetically as things can just be imagined into existence. And so all of everything here was imagined into existence. That's a hypothetical rule set, not the one that I think is most logical. That's just a nonsense rule set. But yeah, I mean, it would make sense that there's a bigger place than here that has a different rule set that allows this to exist, as this and its rule set doesn't seem to allow it to exist. Like the whole world that we live in is a logical fallacy. Or seems to be logically debunked. Like we live in a world that seems to be logically debunked. If you said, how is this created? Nothing. Silence. Silence from everybody, even me. How was this created? Well, get down and kneel then. Get down and kneel. Look to your God. Look to your Einstein. Look to your textbook. Look to your movie. Imagine your role as a video game character. And praise the creator of said simulation. And then praise his creator. God damn. It never ends. It never ends. It never ends. Then praise its creator. And so on and so on and so on until you answer the fucking question because you don't know.